Hello. So this is the next in the series of me essentially comparing Hecate with different deities, beings, spirits. At the moment, it's mainly focused on goddesses, but it's not limited to goddesses. This series has come about because of Hecate herself, because on my path, she recently, relatively speaking, revealed things to me which I've shared on the channel, which just show that she is just so powerful. She is in everything. She is that liminal goddess, of course, we know that anyways, but she is more than that. She really is a main name for the divine feminine and for the divine in general. So she wanted me to have this series to illustrate the differences and the links between her and different beings and pantheons. You can believe what you want to believe. I'm not sitting here preaching at you, telling you must think this. At the end of the day, these beings all come from different cultures, different parts of the world, and they operate freely within their own remits. I'm not disrespecting that, I'm not trying to remove them from their culture. But remember, culture is very human. And us as humans in general, regardless of where you are in the world, we're all human beings. No matter the colour of your skin, the language you speak, or whatever, we're humans. And we all share this one planet. And that's what she wants me to illustrate, regardless of views and all this jazz. It's for her that I'm doing this, okay? So, next in the series is speaking about Isis, or Aset, or Auset, as she is known in her Kemetic Egyptian name. Now, Isis is a very complex lady in herself. She is a lady that, well, she's still around now, obviously, but in her ancient Egyptian, worship, she was around for so long. She's got links with so many different goddesses. She takes on so many different roles. It's hard to pin her down as well. But I put a vote out on YouTube posts asking sneakily which goddess interested you the most, and Isis won. And that's why we're talking about her first. So let's get into it already. Hecate and Isis. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. I'm Sarah, that divination witch. This channel is a witchy safe space and community. You can share opinions, you can ask questions. The one thing we don't tolerate here is people being a-holes, basically. So as long as we're civil, we can agree to disagree and whatever, and I want to keep it that way. So if you want to join, hit subscribe. It's free. If you want to support me in the channel, all of my links are below. I'd be grateful if you could have a look. I do lots of different readings. I've got Patreon, teaching a lot on there, do readings on there, talk about tarot, teaching about Hecate, going through a path working. There's loads going on, and there's more to come too. So please go have a look. I'd be grateful. Thank you. One thing I want to preface as well, I'm no historian before we get into this. I come at this from my experience, from a spiritual point of view, as a pagan, I suppose, as somebody who believes in spirits and gods and deities. So, yeah, don't quote me on being a historian here. There is an interesting article as one of the sources, which I will link in the description, by Sarita. I think that's how you say her name. She is... If anyone works with Hecate, you'll know her name. She is a scholarly lady. She's wrote many books on Hecate and other things. She knows her stuff. And there were some interesting things she spoke about with regards to a link with Isis and Hecate. So I'll try remember to put that article below. So, right. Isis, first and foremost, she is a mother goddess of the Egyptian or Kemetic pantheon. Kemeticism as we know it today is a reconstruction, just like people do with Hellenismos, modern day neo-pagans have reconstructed some of the beliefs and practices of the ancient world, and Kemeticism is ancient Egypt. Now, as a whole, ancient Egypt was around for thousands and thousands of years, longer than the modern age, longer than the age we live in, so it's bloomin' complex. What we know of it is the tip of the iceberg, I feel, and I'm not a historian like I've said, so there's a hell of a lot of details that are lost to time at the moment, so we are doing the best we can. So I'm going to mainly be talking about experiences as well, alright? But yes, very complex time period. With that being the case, the deities themselves in general, there's lots of them, hell of a lot of them. Just like there is in Hellenismos, there's a lot of crossover, which happens more in more contemporary times, but the Egyptian goddesses, they transformed from one thing into another. Isis, or Set, was not always who she is known as today. Hathor was more the main motherly goddess at one point, and then Isis took on a lot of Hathor's qualities, and there'll be other things as well that she's took on, but it's just as time has gone by, you know. So Hathor is the goddess of love, fertility, stuff like this. She is the archetype of Inanna, of Aphrodite, of Venus, you know, the love goddess archetype. And yeah, Isis has took on roles to do with Hathor, but also roles to do with other deities too. Isis in herself, in her main mythology, is the wife of Osiris, and she is the sister as well of Osiris. I know that's a thing they did, but also a sister to Nephthys and to Set. Now, Nephthys as her sister, this is complex too, from my understanding. Nephthys is a separate being, but also you could say they're one and the same, which happens a lot. I'm thinking of Bastet and Sekhmet as another kettle of fish. Two separate goddesses, but some people say they're the same. Bit like in Norse myth, Frigga and Freya, two separate beings. Some say they're the same. It's that sort of vibe of, oh, they're very, very similar, but they're different. Now, in funerary rites, Isis and Nephthys were both called on, but Nephthys is kind of like her darker sister, you could say. So Nephthys, generally speaking, rules over magic and necromancy and things like this, stuff that Hecate rules over. But then in some cases, Isis rules over all that too, as well as her other roles of being motherly, a protector, a sky goddess. You know, I think of archetypes like Hera, like Juno, like Asherah, you know, that sky, ethereal energy. So she just encapsulates so much. It's so complex. So yes, Nephthys could be called on for funerary rites, but Isis was too. I'm sure there were priestesses back in the day. Again, I'm not a historian, but there were priestesses that would take on the different roles. One would be Nephthys, one would be Isis. I'm sure that was the case, but she is just so complex. Now, one of her main myths as well was the resurrection of Osiris. So Osiris, her husband, was killed by Set, and Isis helped resurrect him. It's a whole thing. Go look into the mythologies in general. That's one of the main myths. So just touching on who Isis is as a being in all of that, that's very Hecate to me. And it's not to say they're exactly the same, because Isis encapsulates like being a supreme being in a way. She is the heavenly goddess, but she's also an underworld goddess. She's also a mother. She's also somebody that is a protector and a household goddess in that regard. She does a lot of the different roles of the divine feminine. She's like this all-encompassing queen. And in the modern age, is a book probably behind me, you might have noticed or not, there are movements that incorporate Isis into different things in the modern age. This one behind me is psychic vampirism. I'm not saying I'm a part of that, it's just something I'm interested in, hence I've got the book. So she just encompasses so much. She's just, whoa. So with that being the case, it's no wonder you can compare her to Hecate. You could arguably say they're the same energy. Hecate, if you're not new to the channel, well, you'll know by now, she's just everything. Yeah, in modern times, people say, oh, she's the witchcraft goddess, she's into necromancy, she rules over the dead, she rules over lost souls, she rules over magic, the liminal. But if you look into her further, she is the liminal, hence she is in everything. Literally everything. Every decision that ever needs to be made, she is in there. So she has aspects to her that are celestial. She has aspects to her that are more primal, motherly aspects, protective aspects, you name it, she's got an aspect for it. And that is Isis too, but maybe in a different way of understanding, but very much this supreme feminine energy. Now, another way that I could say they are linked is the PGM. The PGM is the Greek magical papyri, and it's a textbook that still stands today. It was actually a working sorcerer, their textbook, and it wasn't someone who was fancy either. It was like an everyday person, and it was at the time period of Greco-Roman society. So that book, the PGM, which you can still get today, you can do the spells if you really want. That book has names of Greek deities in, Roman, Kemetic deities, there's hints of Hebrew stuff, even I would say Arabic influences personally. Again, I'm no historian. Hecate, her name, of course, being the witchcraft goddess, is used a lot in that book, but used interchangeably with other deities, like Isis is one of them. There are others, the Eshgagal, even Aphrodite is in that book, for love spells, of course, So they are all kind of in that context. We can look at that book and see it through that sorcerer's eyes, that textbook, that guy or girl, you never know, who had that book and were casting these spells for everyday people, the way they viewed the gods, the way they saw it. And maybe they saw it in the same way that I'm trying to explain it here, that they're all interconnected. You want to love goddess, all right, you might ask Aphrodite, or, well, you might ask Isis. If you want something else, okay, Hecate might help. Oh, maybe a Eshgagal, because you were calling upon a force with a different face. And that was a time period where I say we broadly, of course, but that area of the world, culture was crossing over. They were a bit of a melting pot. So it was a bit like a taste of what we have today. Modern pagans and practitioners and people who work with spirits and all this, there's a lot of crossovers. There's a lot of synchronicities we can pick up on, because in this age of communication and technology, we can look into the ancient Egyptians if we want, and we can look into the ancient Greeks, and we can look into the Celts and whoever we want. It's at our fingertips. Google it, we can do that so freely. And that's why it's a bit more complex this day and age. We're not just limited to our own little bubble. But that was when we were starting to, open our eyes. There's more than one bubble to look at. Now, an interesting thing which is in the article below that I wanted to say connected Isis and Hecate is some of their symbolism. So Isis, I feel personally it's because of that link from Hathor, because she kind of developed from Hathor. Now Hathor is the fertility love goddess, and she is and was represented by a cow and the horns. Now, fun fact, fertility gods and goddesses are normally represented by cows and bulls because of the horns, because on a male, the horns, it's a virile male is what it stands for. That's where you get the horned god. You get Pan, Kernanos, that kind of vibe. Virile male. But on a woman, the horns represent the female reproductive system. So if you look at a diagram of a womb, it was a way of it being linked with that. The ancient peoples knew this. It was linked. Same with like how a lotus flower is also a thing, representation of a womb, a pomegranate, representation of a woman's vajayjay. These things, just because they didn't have the technology we do and the understanding we do, doesn't mean they didn't understand at all. The ancients were so advanced in ways we still can't comprehend. Like I say, what we know is the tip of the iceberg. That's why we have all these conspiracy theories about, ancient aliens and all of this. Like, who's to say, really? We just don't know. Some fantastic feats that they had back in the day. That's like, we think we are explaining it, but are we? We don't really know. There's a lot of missing info. So the cow thing, Hecate is represented by that as well. Perhaps in some of her more lesser known aspects, but there are some representations of Hecate where she actually has a cow head. So she isn't always a woman. And that is a fertility aspect. It's a broad connection, I suppose. A lot of these things are. Another connection is the symbolism of dogs. And you wouldn't think that with Isis, I suppose. But that's where the article comes in. Sarita, thanks for pointing it out. There was a culture. So in Roman times, Isis was brought over there. And her Roman iconography, a certain area of the world, she was depicted with dogs. I'm sure she was riding a dog or something like that. Now, dogs, in general, yes, Hecate is associated with them, but in both cultures, and in a lot of cultures, they're associated with the dead. I mean, especially Egyptian culture. Think about Anubis, he's a dog-faced deity that is associated with the underworld and the dead. This seems to be a common theme. So Isis being accompanied by dogs in that regard, it's very much a Hecate thing to me. And it wouldn't surprise me, given how Isis was called on for funerary rites, that she has aspects to her that are just very Hecate, as in walking the liminal, rounding up lost souls and helping them cross over, It does seem they both serve major functions like that. But ultimately, I'm not going to say they're exactly the same. They have different personalities. They will present to you in however you're comfortable with, whether it's Hecate, Isis, or any goddess or deity or any spirit in general. Hecate told me this, and it makes complete sense to me. She will meet you where you're at. So once upon a time, I wouldn't have understood any of this. I would have just saw her as the Greek goddess, Greek witch goddess, once upon a time. But now it is way more than that. The concept of divinity being linked, some people just don't want to think about that. Some people like to say they're all separate, their own beings. And while they are, they're also linked. So you don't have to believe that. Believe what you want, but there are the similarities there, And I'm not going to say that they're all just exactly the same, because we can't dismiss the culture that they come from and the human touch that we have given each energy, And over time that will evolve and change. And like I've said already with Isis, how she changed from, she took on roles of Hathor, it was just Hathor, and then Isis appears, and then all of that. And then she changed more in the PGM times. They all, crossed over then. And then even now, modern times, psychic vampirism. People have theories on that and their belief. That's their belief, whatever. She is evolving. They are all evolving, as we evolve too. So I hope this helped. I'm just doing this, like I said at the beginning, for Hecate, because she wants me to. Because I do strongly feel she wants me, and not just her as Hecate, but divinity in general. They want us to understand they're more linked than we think. This is a way of helping people understand, waking people up, I suppose, because even in mainstream religion, in a Christian mindset as an example, you know, a lot of these theories have been twisted, have been demonized, have been made out to be something they're not. If you go to the origins of Christianity, hence why we have Gnosticism, things are a lot more linked than you realise. There are many things that have been twisted, man-made. It's all about control, ruling in fear. And with that being the case, there's a lot of deprogramming we've got to do. So this is me just doing my little bit to try and help, okay? It's not as simple as you may think, and I'm very led to be doing this. So that was the video on Hecate and Isis. I hope it's helped. Please let me know in the comments, is there anyone else you've noticed connections with? Let me know, put it in the comments below. Check out the channel for more information. I've got a playlist on Hecate that's over 100 videos long. And I've got more videos to come like this. And until next time, stay safe, stay witchy. Bye.